Doing research on the internet in this new age of AI is funny. It's funny like strange, and it's funny like haha. Google, and not to be missed, Google AI. Both suggest follow-up questions to the question that you originally asked, or that they think are relevant to the topic you originally typed in. I was doing some research, exploring different themes related to this week's parashah, and as I was typing things in, I encountered their suggested question: why is Gen Z so obsessed with liminal spaces? Now, this was not the question I originally asked, but I became instantly fascinated by what the answer might be. So let's unpack this question for just a moment. Let's start with, what is Gen Z? Now, I'm not a member of Gen Z, I'm a millennial. I can talk for a long time about what a millennial is, what the characteristics of millennials are. Just one thing, our childhoods included both the time before the internet was a thing and the time when the internet was very much a thing. Millennials grew up witnessing the successful launch of something transformative. Now, Gen Z, their experience, the internet has been a thing their whole lives. But furthermore, they were powerfully impacted by the Great Recession and the COVID-19 pandemic, having this lived experience of sometimes things can go really, really wrong, deeply embedded from childhood. And in general terms, it makes them more cautious. So that's Gen Z. Back to our question, why is Gen Z so obsessed with liminal spaces? So we talked about Gen Z, now let's talk about what's a liminal space. Now this is the part that for me connects back to the parashah. In the context of Gen Z's obsession, the term liminal space has a meaning that I wasn't previously familiar with. In visual styles proliferated by the internet, a liminal space is an empty or abandoned place that appears eerie, forlorn, and often surreal, commonly spaces of transition. So this, by way of example, could be an empty hotel hallway, or an empty airport, or an empty road. It turns out the broader definition of a liminal space, of the quality of liminality, is transition. A hotel hallway, an airport, a road, these are not places where people usually go to hang out and stay for a while. They're places specifically designed for passing through. And so it seems to me from my very brief exploration of this definition of liminality as it relates to Gen Z and visual style, that the thing that can make liminal spaces eerie is unexpected emptiness. Transitions, the normal and expected. Communal spaces for people to pass through are often bustling. When they are empty, as they were during the pandemic, we know something is off. It turns out, transitions, these life experiences of being in liminal spaces, are not just about travel, they're totally normal. They happen all the time. Anyone who in this past week experienced being caught in traffic knows there are a lot of people out there all the time who are busy going from one place to another, one situation to the next. This movement is part of everyday life. Now, in this past week, as I've moved through the week in our Adat Shalom community, I have to say, I've very much had this feeling of transition, of being in a liminal space. Now, this sounds a little bit more dramatic than it actually is, but I've had a couple of moments of feeling a bit surreal, even a little bit eerie. Now, you're going to laugh at me when I tell you the reason why. It's because this week, I received much fewer email than I usually do. So generally, my workflow is something like this. I'm in meetings or working on projects throughout the day. The emails come streaming steadily in from a variety of different individuals and sources. But this week, I was in meetings and working on projects throughout the day, and the email stream was noticeably quieter. After this had gone on for a couple of days, I was starting to worry that I was missing something important. But finally, just yesterday, after I parked my car in the morning and was walking into my office, I had a flash of insight. Again, you'll laugh at me when I tell you what my insight was. I realized all this past week, our community and staff has been working with amazing focus on two major projects, our gala, which will take place tomorrow, and our social hall renovation, which begins next week. In the liminal space, the space of transition leading up to these two major projects, it's been a high traffic time, so to speak. The metaphorical road has been busy as we're moving full steam ahead towards these goals. Our arrival is coming up soon. We haven't had time for the stream of regularly scheduled email conversation. I first learned about liminality from my colleague, Rabbi Rose Provisor. We were classmates in rabbinical school. And she came to rabbinic education with a background in anthropology, a field of study that has its own particular definition of liminality, the ambiguous, transitional, in-between phase of a rite of passage. A person going through a rite of passage reaches a moment where they exist temporarily on a threshold or limen, where they're detached from their old identity and not yet embodying their new one. And you can understand how this detachment might feel eerie, empty, and surreal. Anthropology teaches us that rites of passage always have three distinct stages. First, separation. The old identity, the old place in the societal structure is removed from the individual. Then there's liminality, the temporary time betwixt and between when the individual doesn't necessarily have a distinct identity. And then reincorporation. The individual receives their new identity and is now reintegrated into the social structure in a new way now that things are different. It turns out we find moments of liminality throughout Jewish life, as Jewish tradition is full of different ways to mark changes, full of rites of passage that define the cycle of time and the cycle of an individual's life. Liminality is that chaos in your kitchen when you're switching over from year-round to Passover, and it's that less frequently discussed chaos of switching your kitchen back to Chametz mode again. Liminality is when the B'nai Mitzvah student arrives with their family absurdly early on a Shabbat morning, dressed in grown-up fancy clothes, ready to read Torah for the community for the first time, or at least as ready as they'll ever be. We read in our Eitz Chaim commentary on this week's parasha, Parashat Naso. Most of the first half of our parasha deals with circumstances when one's place in the community is in question because of unusual behavior. The second half of our parasha deals with the offerings brought by each tribe as the sanctuary's dedication concludes. And our commentary notes this is the longest parsha in Torah. So put differently, our parsha addresses certain situations that can put people in liminal spaces. And it affirms every experience is momentous for the individual, family, and community, that everyone should and shall receive their moment of recognition. These certain situations our parsha addresses which bring people into liminal spaces appear to be quite varied. Medical issues, interpersonal disputes, marital disputes, even vows to abstain from wine. What these situations have in common, in the context of our parasha, is that they bring the individual out of the regular flow of society. Something has happened that has caused a separation, that has brought the individual into a place of ambiguity. And for each of these situations, our parasha provides instructions on how to reintegrate the individual into the community. It's after these instructions in the second half of our parasha where we illustrate that each particular situation counts and is impactful on the community as a whole. This is the section that makes our parasha the longest parasha in all of Torah. It contains 89 verses describing the offerings of each of the 12 tribes of Israel as the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is dedicated. Each tribe gets its own special day for its nasi, its leader, to bring the exact same offerings as every other tribe. In this key moment for the ancient Israelites, each tribe gets its own special moment to shine. Each tribe's value is affirmed. Here in our Dot Shalom community today on this Shabbat, we have all sorts of liminality, all sorts of situations in progress. We have our gala, of course, which our committee has been working diligently to prepare, which will be a great celebration of our honorees, Richard and Leah Bernstein, and of our recognition award recipients, Lorene and George Hall, Margie Zinman and Howard Unterberger, Eliza Wine and Sandy Cass. These awards have been announced. Now we're betwixt and between in anticipation. Tomorrow the awards will be received. We have our social hall renovation, which multiple generations of Adat Shalom members and generous donors have been working towards for years. We have willed it, now it's no dream. Finally, our transitional period of betwixt and between is coming to an end, and our new reality, our new beginning, is about to unfold. We have our Chaim Saba Torah reader, Sammy Rabinowitz, having just concluded a momentous transition, receiving his bachelor's degree from USC, beginning a new chapter in his career in his adulthood. Sammy, we know you'll be busy in this time ahead, but we're glad you're staying in the neighborhood. And we have our beloved member, Marsha Machol, having contemplated and planned with her family her aliyah, her upcoming move to Israel. Marsha, you were so loved and you will be so missed. And just for the record, having met personally not just one but two of your sons and one of your daughters-in-law, I know you're in good hands. I know this change will be beautiful for your family. All this, for our community and the individuals within it, is a whole lot of liminality to hold. I'm thinking again about these two different understandings, these two different definitions of liminality, the anthropology one and the Gen Z one. I'm envisioning a Gen Z liminal space like an airport. Maybe it's like the international terminal at LAX, where everyone walks in and the first order of business for each individual traveler is to figure out where to start, to figure out which check-in window they're looking for, to determine how to begin navigating the travels ahead. My blessing for us, for our community as a whole, and for all the individuals who are in times of personal change, is that this airport terminal of liminality not feel vacant and empty and eerie, that instead it feel bustling and active and exciting. After all, change is a regular part of life, and change can be so exciting. Right now, we must be most eagerly anticipating things settling down into their new normal, but that might take a while. The work we have before us today is to move forward through the change and find a way to enjoy the process. It's going to be a momentous week for us. May we be blessed and may we feel blessed to experience all of it together. Shabbat Shalom.